วัสดีค่ะ Welcome. Let's take a look at this picture. The movement is going to the left. There is a friction from the ground going to the right. What is friction? And how is friction related to force? That is what we're going to talk about today. Friction. The resistance that one surface or an object encounters when moving over the other. Or we can also say friction is also known as frictional force. Friction or frictional force acts in the opposite direction of the movement. It occurs when two surfaces rub against each other. A concrete example of that is when you are walking. No? Where is friction? Where is force when you are walking? So force is the force pushing from the shoe sole on the ground. Now the friction between the shoe and the ground allows us to walk without slipping. Take a look at another incident. Now, if you happen to bump on something, just like this lady bumped against the cabinet, the force is from the lady that falls. No? And the resisting force is from the drawer of the cabinet. Now that causes friction. The friction between the knee and the steel cabinet makes it bumpy. How about the moving car? So the car is heading to the left. So the force is going to the left. Where is friction? Now friction is between the tire tread and the road. That prevents the car from slipping, especially on rainy days. Another example. In this picture, the boy is sliding. No? So the force is from the body of the boy. And the opposite force that causes friction is from the slide. No? So there is friction between the body of the boy and the surface of the slide. There are factors affecting friction. Number one, the texture of the contacting surfaces. If it's rough or smooth, the rougher the surface are, the greater the friction between them. Believe it or not. Let's take a look at this car. The road is rough. The speed of the car is slow due to the greater friction from the surface of the rough road. Because it's been said, the rougher, the greater the friction. Comparing to this car moving to the right on an asphalt road. So the surface of the road is smooth. Now the speed of the car is faster because the surface of the asphalt road is smooth, which had caused lesser friction. So the speed is faster. Another example to take note. The weight of the object. The heavier the object is, the greater the friction acting on it. We will take the excavator as an example. Excavators are heavy equipments, so they move slower. Because the heavier, the greater the friction, the slower the movement. The excavator moves slowly because its structure is too heavy. That causes greater friction from the road. Comparing to the sports car. The sports car was invented with a light body, which makes this car moves the fastest. So if you wish to buy a car, you prefer sports car. It can accelerate fast. Friction allows object to stay still on the table or on the ground. Looking at the example, after some toy blocks are stacked up, they will stay still and do not fall because of friction. Friction allows us to hold objects. The pencil in the hand does not slip easily. Why? The friction between the hand and the pencil prevents the pencil from slipping. Friction allows object to move without slipping. Example: walking. The friction between the shoes and the floor prevents us from slipping. Friction allows object to move without slipping. The friction between the field and the tires prevents motorcycle from slipping. Friction gives out heat. Do not try this one at home, kid. Okay, we can light a match by striking out against the object. No? So the moment you strike a match, it produces a spark, produces heat. The friction caused the heat to ignite fire. This is the primitive method of starting a fire, using friction theory. Friction can be used to start a fire. True. We'll see in the next page. This is the modern bow drill. Okay, let's try to see the most famous bow drill fire starter, how effective it is. Look at this man. This man is trying to start a fire using a bow drill. the friction theory. He wants to apply the friction theory using his primitive bow drill. Can he start the fire? We'll see. So this man is starting to rub the bow and the drill. Faster and faster, increasing the friction to produce more heat. You see, he produced fire using the theory of friction produces heat. Look. But I'm not telling you to do bow drills at home or to try it. No, I'm not recommending either. Because nowadays, we're not using bow drills. We are using lighters to start a fire. Okay, friction sharpens and smoothens the contacting surfaces. For example, a friction between the blade and a knife, the blade of a knife, and the whetstone helps to sharpen the blade. So this is testing if friction could sharpen the blade. Yes, it's true. Okay, friction stops moving objects. Look. The friction between the gloves and the ball. So friction stops the ball. There are a few disadvantages of friction these days. Okay, friction wears out the contacting surfaces. For example, the soles of your shoes, they will be worn out. Okay, because of friction, our shoes are easily worn out. There are a few disadvantages, yes. Look at this tire. That is the new one. And on the right side is the worn out tire. What caused the worn out of the tire? Friction, of course. Friction slows down all moving objects. What makes the ship move slower is the friction. So the engines of the ship work extra to keep the ship moving against the friction. So the ship is too heavy, so the heavier, the greater the friction, the slower the movement. Friction not only wears out parts of the engines or machines, but also produces heat. So this is the car engine. So the car engine, every time you turn it on, it produces heat. I'm not saying you're going to touch the car engines or the engines of your cars. Okay, because friction not only wears out parts of the engine or machines but also produces heat. Sometimes it results to overheating of the engines. The heat can damage the sensitive part of the engines and machines. You can ask your father about it. Okay, before we will end, let's learn some lessons, some words. Whetstone. That is the whetstone. No, don't forget that. Car engine. That is car engine. Match. Do not ever play with your matches at home. It ignites the fire. Matches are created to start a fire safely, but not for games. Shoe sole. Sandpaper. Car engine uses friction to function properly. Car engine. Shoe sole. Worn out shoe sole. Our shoe sole got easily worn out because of friction. Bow drill. Bow drill is the primitive way of starting a fire using the theory of friction. Good job! Now it's your turn to answer Google Forms for your seed work. And put out your science workbook, open it on page 52 and 53. Answer exercises on that pages. That's all for today. Thank you for attending my class. This is Norbel Quatres. Sawadee ka. Kapun ka.